All right, welcome everyone to the Cluster Addons meeting. It is the 1st of October 2019, and we have an action-packed agenda. Yeah, we have a couple of actions from last time. I don't know if, Justin, if you managed to do COPS things.
I did not, but I did manage to start playing with the master build of Kube Builder, which it does seem to work. So that's at least one good thing. Which, although that was your action item, so I'm sorry, but yes, I am working towards it in cups, but I have not actually plumbed it together. But we're getting closer. We got a controller into cups, so we never had a controller before. So now we have our first controller on the master branch. So, as in like a long-running Kubernetes Kube Builder controller that now runs. So we have precedent now, and hopefully we can put more in there.
Yeah, so COPS is getting the controller into the cluster after the control plane bootstraps, and then you can install your add-on, basically.
Yeah, but we never had that controller to date.
Yes.
We had to do it for labels, so node labels. So we now have a controller. So.
Oh, you're using Kube Builder for the node label controller. Oh, cool.
Yeah, it works well.
I like it. That's cool. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I had an action to take a look at the master build of Kube Builder now that the PR was merged. I also asked them if they're going to cut a new release soon. I believe they're looking into it. And in our action to upgrade the core DNS operator to Kube Builder 2, I had a brief look at what the the scaffolding looks like and how big the changes are. In total, it's about 2,000 lines of changes, and I think I would need an expert to tease this apart and figure out like how much of it is stuff we can further simplify and how much of it is actual code of the core DNS operator. I think we can take a look at that online, offline. I'm not sure how useful it is to go through that now. Yes, I also had another item. I was looking, I mentioned it in the last meeting. I had a look at trying to make sense of the different user stories. I haven't shared this yet because I'm not quite happy with what it looks like. I guess I can please share my screen. I guess the font is pretty small. I don't know. Can you read this or is it too small? Yes,
Well, too small for me.
Too small, right. Let me see. All right. So I started with, Lee and I were talking about this, and we saw that there's different user roles. There's the user, operator, maintainer, and there's all kinds of different activities. And yeah, I'm not quite sure this is the best format for it. What I tried to get towards is that we sort of have like a little script, like, okay, this is what the user wants to do. This is the expected outcome. This is the interaction. I just used Kube ADM as a placeholder to get us started and to make it a bit easier to understand for somebody from the outside looking at our effort. And I listed issues related to this, stuff that needs to be done. I'm sure there are better tools for this. I don't know if you all feel like this is a useful exercise in general. I just felt like at some stage we're going to reach out to more people who either want to write operators or who might want to integrate the add-on installer into their distribution of Kubernetes or their installer. And it might make sense to track the stuff we're doing and what still needs to be done and attack it from a user's perspective. I don't know.
I think valuable exercise, and it will make sort of talking about this a lot easier to folks. I think the first question a lot of people will have with this is like, well, why would you introduce this overhead? And this is the start of all those reasons, I would say. In terms of format, you know, I don't know, there's no easy way to, these are hard. The getting the phrasing and the words right is the really hard problem. And that will take some time and iteration. But this looks like a great start to that.
Okay. I guess I can just start sharing it with, I don't know, to share just with you guys or the cluster lifecycle list, or like where should this go? I don't know what the usual way to go about this is, like setting up permissions.
Generally, you make it world readable, and then you in order to either edit or comment as appropriate, you bind it to the appropriate group or mailing list, which in this case, I guess would be Kubernetes SIG cluster lifecycle.
Right. Okay. Cool. I'll look into that. All right.
I usually give Kubernetes dev the comment access, so that since that's the general Kubernetes org, and then there's like guidelines specifically in the community repo if you want like the official way.
Okay, cool. All right. The next action was for Fabrizio and Lee to report back from Kube ADM planning.
Yeah, so Fabrizio's not on right now, but we've been actively talking about this stuff in KubeADM, and with some of the other priorities, there are some P1 items in KubeADM that kind of push the add-on installer back a little bit, but we settled on, we need the KEP, right? So that's a P1.5, and then the actual implementation merging as an alpha feature. We don't have any qualms about that being feature gated and all that, but it's just marked as a P2.5 for planning. And so I did begin working on that as well. But that's where we're at. And then I'll be joining the KubeADM office hours again. I missed it last week, but that is tomorrow at the same time block. If you want to hear some more updates.
Any questions for Lee about this? Yeah, thanks a lot for looking into this. And I believe you have a demo light up. What are you going to show us?
I have to like figure out how to use my window manager. Everyone can see my screen now? Hopefully. Thank you. So it's basically, there's a pretty small diff here. I've linked it in the meeting notes, kind of non-traditionally. It's not a PR yet, but if you just like go to this, then you can see the commits here. This is like 1,000 lines of vendor, but the actual patch itself is quite small. So what is it? It's like 1.3 stat. Oops. Yeah. So we're looking at 41 plus 23 and 155 plus 155 minus 4. So pretty small patches. This is a clean build of this commit right here. I am in a kind cluster that it's just a single node instance that looks like this. It just has the output paths of my Kubernetes binaries, as well as some config files mounted in. And then I have to install Git currently in order to get manifests from anywhere. This is definitely a very notable dependency to have. the kubedemon team is keen on using OCI images for distributing these customized bundles. I think I'd also just be fine using the HTTPS manifest list and upgrading it into whatever. But currently that's not supported in this straight vendor of the add-on installer POC. So I haven't made any modifications, such as like a support for kubeconfig and all that. But this is the plumbing finished for a kubedem config file. So if your config looks kind of like this, this is just a defaulted init and cluster configuration with the feature gate installed for add-on installer. And then you can pass a new component config, which is plumbed in with this PR for the add-on install configuration that's vendored from our repository. And then you just pass it a list of add-ons. This is a customized reference from a GitHub repository and subdirectory at a specific tag. So, and then I found a bug in the dry run support that I didn't realize, which is that if you're dry running an entire cluster coming up, there is no API server. So actually running the kubectl command to try and get the dry run output doesn't make any sense when the API server is not there. So that's something I'll need to add. But that was a kubedem init command that just ran. So kubedem init with some ignore flags for the system verification checks. And then you pass it the config file with our component configs in dry run mode. And then I should have run this earlier because sometimes pulling the components takes a little bit. But yeah, this it does work. Oops. Config etc kubernetes admin conf. So as far as a little POC, the library with the command line implementation that we have PR'd currently to the add-on operators repo. I'm vendoring in my fork, and this brings up a cluster and doesn't install kubeproxy and doesn't install core DNS or kubedns in the hard-coded ways, and then it just delegates to whatever the add-on installer configuration is listed and supplied. And that's definitely an improvement. Some things that we want to get implemented would be the defaulting of that component config when it's not supplied to make sure that it already installs like core DNS and kubeproxy for users who don't care about that stuff. And then like just little UX improvements. This ended up being in a pretty good place. And then it's also plumbed into the kubedem configs, or sorry, the add-on. What am I saying? The phases. But then, so if I load up the path here. So this is part of init phase add-on. There's an installer phase. So when the feature gate is enabled, these things are ignored, and this will run as part of the all phase. And then you can execute that individually. Right, so there's flags for dry run and feature gates and things like that. But, yeah. So here we can see that the cluster came up for the most part, and now it's just installing that kubedem add-on with Customize. Should probably add a prefix logger here. And apparently it didn't work, so there's that. Probably my kubectl isn't set up properly. Yeah. Did I miss? Oh, I didn't. I'm in a shell that's a little different. So then kubeadm init SIG YAML phase add-on installer. There we are. Now that should work.
I have 2 questions while we're waiting.
Yeah.
Oh, never mind. We can watch it finish. Looks like it succeeded, right?
Yep.
Yay.
So there's the my app pod example installed to the cluster by something that's ultimately calling into the add-on installer library and then doing the execs under the hood with kubectl and customize. So there you go. Something that isn't totally broken into kubeadm. Fire away in questions.
That is very cool. So it looked like you added a binding to Git, or at least GitHub, or what was going on there? And is that in?
Oh yeah. So that's in the cluster setup YAML. I didn't do anything special. The dev cluster installs Git as a dependency because then the configuration, this add-on reference, this reference type is parsed by customized libraries. And then it shells out to Git under the hood inside of customize as a library.
Got it. Should we add that to to the, I guess, controller runtime declarative pattern so that it can also source from Git?
I think that would probably be good.
Okay.
Because Git is really kind of lingua franca for operations. It's like the most common way to store manifests, I think.
Very cool. And then I was unclear as to how the commands under kubeadm plugins, like the core DNS command subcommand, how did that relate to the customized manifest that you?
Yeah, actually, it's probably clear in the code to look at that. 1 second. So, and then this is in, of course, I opened it up specifically in kubeadm and my editor doesn't remember because I was previously editing this at the root level repository. There we are. Okay. So basically there's this phase runner inside of kubeadm. It's just esoteric knowledge about how kubeadm runs and how we split up the code. And basically there's an all phase inside of this subsection called add-ons, and all will run everything inside of the phase list. And so there's run add-on installer, and there's run DNS add-on, and run kubeproxy add-on, right? So there's 3 phases. And what I've done is to separate this functionality, I've installed a feature gate, which can be enabled or disabled and is disabled by default. So when the user runs kubeadm normally, the feature gate is disabled, which means that this does not short circuit the core DNS phase and the kubeproxy phase. So these are the previous hard-coded implementations. And then when you enable the feature gate, these things just do nothing. And then this phase, which is also always running, only actually does something when the feature gate is enabled. Right, so we load the config in just like the previous phases, and then we check to see, oh, like, should we do something? Is there a configuration? If so, let's go ahead and do that since the feature gate's enabled. Yeah. So
and where do you
that's
source it from in this case? Like install add-ons does, I guess it's like.
Where does the add-on installer struct come from?
I guess where does the manifest for core DNS come from in this case? Or did you just, can we go down a little bit and then it looks like, well, I can look at the diff, but yeah, this looks really cool.
So yeah, and just to be clear, what I just demoed did not install core DNS.
Okay.
And it did not install kubeproxy. So if you look at, yeah, like there's nothing there except for just the core control plane. So there's no cluster add-ons that there's no none of those core add-ons that are installed, because in my add-on installer configuration, I only said to install this like multi-base example, which just puts a pod into the default namespace. Yeah. But if you were to change this list to say, right, install kubeproxy manifest list and install core DNS operator, right, then now we can put dumb things and smart things into the cluster using this manifest or using this add-on list of customized directories.
That's very cool.
And then that is also, this works from your present working directory. So if you just want to specify files on your file system, that's totally a thing. And then with the work that Evan Cordell did, hopefully we can get some OCI image support into Kustomize. So then we can remove the dependencies and use some signed images for this process. Other questions? Cool. So
that's really cool.
thanks, Jeff. Yeah, I think like what's really exciting, right, is now you can just like pass this config file to a kubenim init, and like your cluster will come up the way you described, which is yeah, an operator doesn't have to do anything anymore. There's probably simpler ways that this could be accomplished, but I think this is about the simplest way we can do it using Kubernetes API machinery. Since the add-on installer library is pretty simple. But yeah, my next to-do item here that I wanted to get done yesterday and did not is to get a KEP up, since that's going to put this really on the merged roadmap for this cycle. Yeah. And then, yeah, probably moving on from the demo if there's no more questions, but the diff is up. It's a clean build, so you can play with it yourself if you'd like. I don't have like these development helpers pushed anywhere. So this config YAML and dev cluster sh that I use for kind, those are just like my personal tools. But let me know if you want some help messing around with this at all, or want to look into see on integrating the installer library into other cluster managers. And then oh yeah, and the config, the kubenim config, I believe, is supported by Cluster API, if I'm not mistaken. So there are some Cluster API providers that should work in bootstrapping this kind of thing now. Yeah. Justin's smiling.
I'm like, that'll be really interesting to try. We should try that. I'm like, that would be really cool. It's like, wow, I didn't twig that. Yeah. Yeah,
nah, because that's like was like Lucas's whole vision with component config, right? Is you could just all these abstractions would bubble up the stack to the highest level order things for cluster management, GitOps, and all that. Cool. Well, we have other items on the list. I want to make sure we can get to them in a respectable amount of time. But thanks for watching my little demo.
Thanks a lot, Lee, for your work on this. Yeah, one thing I wasn't quite clear on earlier is that like some of this Git customized functionality should be moved elsewhere. Like there was some work item regarding this. I thought I captured it, but I wasn't quick enough.
I think I asked whether we should just support. So currently, when you generate an add-on operator, we only have one source for the manifests right now, which is a local file system. and whether we should add support for pulling from Git, assuming you have Git installed, I guess.
Yeah, I think like if the vision for packaging continues to mature around customize for core stuff, that having the HTTP client, OCI client, and Git client available in things that want to use those packages makes sense. So shipping an operator, we could have a base image with some of those dependencies. Right? And we could build versions without them, you know, for people who want secure environments or something. But yeah, I see the default probably being useful to have Git there. You're thinking for the base manifests for like the core DNS operator and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking we should at least add the support such that if you have Git in your container, that we can use Git as the source in the same way that you specified it there.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of become like increasingly concerned with like the number of round trips to the internet that a default Kubernetes installation will need to make in order to come up. So I'm not sure if like just shipping an OCI image that contains all of the base manifests by default is probably a good way to start. But having the ability to point the operator easily with a config flag to some other repository sounds like something really attractive for like a disaster scenario, right? Like as an operator of a cluster in a mature environment, I don't have to build a container. I can fork the repo and then point the operator to it or something. But
or I was thinking of like the hacking development scenario that I can like push to my like branch somewhere and just like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I would see that as a really nice scenario for like if I'm on the core DNS team and we are iterating on sort of head, being able to describe that either in like the core DNS repo itself might be nice. Just because for dev and iteration, like it's a lot easier to push to Git than it is to push to Docker, so to speak. So maybe not a default, but a easily adjustable type choice. Maybe that's an area we want to add to fill in.
Allowing the operator to source from Git.
I totally agree. The default, the real users of these things, the end users of these things probably aren't doing it or aren't doing it so much, and definitely not by default.
Yeah, it's not a good default for a lot of reasons. Even just the security surface is significant when you add the network trips and the Git protocol.
We should probably also add HTTPS support at the same time, though. Like I feel like that is the more egregiously missing one that like is pretty clear. So I might work on that this sprint.
Yeah, just a blob of or a multi-doc YAML.
Yeah, I mean the current file structure is designed to support discovery. It doesn't require a directory listing.
Yeah.
So we can use the same, just like replace file.get with http.get.
I'm actually thinking as well that I would like the add-on installer to support that, not just a customize ref. Because you can point to a version to manifest on GitHub so easily, a specific commit SHA or a branch name, and there's so much out there that can be installed by a manifest list. It's kind of I was thinking even. So I'm thinking instead of just a bare list of strings, we should have a struct under there, and it can support things like name and ref explicitly. The name is used for things like pruning, so you can change the ref of things and like know that the add-on needs to be removed. But the other thing I was thinking is that we should support an inline patch list inside of the add-on installer config, so that it doesn't require complex like assembly of a directory to describe modifications. Like you don't have to fork it, or that kind of thing. And if we can inline some patches, then we can also support like upgrading a manifest list with patches. Right. So I could take like the Calico manifest list and then patch in my own details with the add-on installer configuration, and it would just work.
We should play around with this. I like there is similar functionality in like if we built a Calico CRD, right, we'd have patches in there, but this is at a like more generic level, so it's certainly worth playing around with and seeing.
I think that there's probably we can build some shared libraries around this and then have them be imported by both the operator and the installer and have it be useful. So.
I wonder if we could also have a generic CRD, a thingy. CRD.
A thing
you install a thingy, and the thingy or thing, yes, the thing is like. So your current add-on installer could effectively be a list of things.
I mean, it could even really just be an operator version of the add-on installer library.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the specification of the individual things that become YAML.
Yeah. Like there's a thing list, like an add-on list is the type. And then you're thinking about writing an operator for an add-on.
So if it was Calico or something like that, we would hopefully be packaged as an operator. If it was a simpler, like I have my, I don't know, like something I just want to pull off the internet, maybe, and I don't want to bother writing an operator for it, even though we've made it so easy. Then like we could just have a thing that the thing would just like be like, I pull whatever it is and I have no fields and off I go.
Yeah.
It's a little awkward because when a thing grows up and becomes a full operator, then we have to change kind. Like if a thing evolves into a big thing, then we have to change the kind. But
yeah, it's almost like it needs an informer. Like you would upgrade the operator to operate not only on thing but also kind.
Oh, like that's a good idea. Yeah,
right?
Like
and then now it can tell the difference because it has informers for both. And then it can see, thing got upgraded to my kind, and then it starts ignoring the thing, so you can delete it without destroying this whatever. Kind of sophisticated orchestration but yeah, I think basically the declaration is like, my new version of my operator understands that if there's a my kind of the same thing, then ignore the thing.
Yeah, yes. We're gonna need a better name. We're gonna need a name. It's not thing.
Thing and my kind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Another way to maybe surface that is, we think about those manifests. At this point, we don't have a concept of this manifest is too new for this operator, but we may be able to expose that sort of mechanism where, that generic thing controller goes, oh no, this is looking for a specific kind operator. I'm just going to keep my hands off for now. So that's sort of if we subscribe to the latest channel, or even explicitly say, I want this kind to be now, version 2.
That's a nice approach. I like that.
And
hopefully it would be a major upgrade, not just stuff it in the like a patch version. Like this, you suddenly stop getting upgrades.
Yes.
This is good. We're making progress. It feels good to make progress on something. After all of the change waving hands.
Thank you so much for doing that Kubedium work. That's really super impressive. It's great to actually see it in action.
After tracing through all the code and finally figuring out, it's you feel like you do so much work and then the resulting patch is 180 line difference. which is really like a success story about the add-on installer library, I guess. But it's kind of cool to see how thin the shim is, because that means it should be pretty easy to implement in other places. If anyone has an example of prefixing a writer in Go that's like simple, I basically want to pass a version of standard out to the library that when it writes to it, all of the lines are prefixed. And I wanted to stream to standard out in real time.
And you want it to be line based.
Oh, I don't know if I want it to be line based, because I think it'd be kind of nice if it could print dots, right?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Right, because the line based solution is actually just use a scanner, but I don't know enough about or you can do read bytes to back to some character.
I'll take a look. I might have something that I did like that for like over an SSH session where it was streaming back.
Yeah.
But I can promise you it's not pretty.
If anyone has any ideas, I just don't really know enough about like the difference between writing to a pseudo terminal and not, like some of those Unixy semantics, because I know that things are buffered when you put them into like a pipe. And yeah, I just don't know, like, if I write a Go routine that's like constantly reading from a writer, like if that's the right way to do it. But
you would just implement the writer, right?
would you implement a writer that then just when it's written to writes to standard out using like funct print line or funct print?
Just out.write, yeah. And I'm wondering if you just replace the new line byte with new line prefix.
I think that sounds correct, right? So you implement the writer, and then any input you just run a regex replace all, so it even handles multiple lines.
It sounds correct. So I think the proof of the pudding will be when you try this thing and discover, oh wait, this is like, as you say, like ANSI terminal breakage or whatever it is.
Yeah. Unfortunately, this kind of there's like programs that I found out that you can exec programs like a FFmpeg that like modify their pseudo terminal like internally, which is really gross. But
hopefully people won't be execing FFmpeg as an add-on, but you never know.
It sounds like a great use case for an encoding cluster, right? I've written one of those before. And did I ever tell you about that, Justin? No.
You can tell me later.
Yeah.
Unless you want to tell us now, but yeah.
I mean, there's a talk from last year's KubeCon that we did for Beatport's encoding.
Oh, cool.
It's encoding 250,000 songs a day with batch V1 jobs, and then the title at the very end of the talk is encoding 140,000 songs a day with batch or with core V1 pods or something like that. So there's some failure stories in there. But
I have the video open now.
Oh.
I'll put it in chat for anyone who wants
to. Yeah.
Nice.
We were like supposed to move on to like, wasn't there like another item where like we wanted to do a face-to-face or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sean Hurley?
Yeah, I don't think Sean is here, but
okay. I mean, I think that would be cool. We're probably most of us at KubeCon, right?
Yeah, we definitely should. I don't know what's the right timing or venue for that. Is this something we should do part of like a contributors summit or a week?
I feel like we should, we could, there's the SIG cluster lifecycle roadmap talk, which I think we should try to snag 5 minutes and just talk about add-ons. And I think we can probably just sync up with Tim on that. I don't know what he's planning for that session, or maybe it's more like a 2 minutes thing, but think that the impact of add-ons potentially for lifecycle and ecosystem is significant enough to be bringing up at the Contributor Summit. And then, yeah, I don't know if there's going to be more of like an unconference, like open spaces kind of style thing, but we should consider suggesting a topic. I think there's like a thing for that already, like a voting suggestion thing. I don't know. Maybe I'll just ask like Tim Pepper or Paris or something.
Yeah, not sure what the best way is to coordinate this now.
Who is doing Contributor Summit this year? Is Paris doing it?
I guess if you ask Paris or George, they're going to let you know who to talk to.
Cool.
But yeah, I like the idea of having a cluster add-ons shout out at the roadmap.
Yeah, I don't think Tim will miss the opportunity to bring it up, but we can help out. And then
yeah, maybe you can agree on a time when you want to meet up and then mention it during the roadmap as well. Like everyone who's interested in add-ons, meet us later at
totally
something.
might work, yeah. And we can bring it up in the channel and just, I mean, that's what we're talking a month and a half from now, right? So there's going to be more work done, and we'll be mid-cycle at that point. Cool. Sounds good to me. Let's definitely try and make it happen.
Super. And Jeff, you had a public service announcement of sorts?
Of sorts, yes. This is relevant to you, Daniel, and I think Sandeep, who dropped, but I'm sure he'll watch the rest. I was going through to create the kube proxy operator. I'll admit I started doing it last night, and found a few little bugs in the plugins bit, and I think I've sufficiently fixed up the plumbing so that the output is what we expect it to be. I've got a PR open to Cube Builder for that, and I CC'd Justin on that. I'm not sure if we have like there's one change in like the core Cube Builder part, and then the other changes are just in that pattern add-ons one. So I don't know what the review process is for Cube Builder to get that through. Or
I'll certainly take a look. We can, sorry?
Bribes?
Bribes, yes. I'll just send Bitcoin to the Cube Builder at Kubernetes.
I'll at least review the code to smooth the passage of the PR. How about that?
Sounds good. And in the meantime, anyone who's sort of going through the building process should I think pick that up. Not many lines of code, but it's where they are that counts.
For the kube proxy operator, can you help me understand how it bootstraps?
So you can run with like host networking and ignoring all of the sort of schedule pods things, and launch a kube proxy operator on like a bare bones Kubernetes cluster. It's a little tricky to get that bare bones cluster, and I have some old hacks I could probably that like messed with the bash version of cluster up to do it, but you can schedule the pod on the master even before like really anything is working, so to speak, as long as that API server communication can happen, which is easy to do when you're running on the same machine.
Do you guys know how to use Kinder? Because it's really, really easy to use.
Kinder?
Kinder, yeah.
I know Kind.
This is the script I use with Kinder. And you just basically do a go get and then a go install of Kubernetes SIGs, or sorry, SIGs k/io Sorry, yeah, kates.io/kubeadm/kinder. So kinder is a kind of like it's like a stripped down like assembly version of kind. So by default, when you create a kind cluster using kind config, Kubernetes is not yet running, but it has everything. And then like you can mount whatever you want into it or build a different base image, you know, or that kind of thing. So, and it just starts up in a little Docker container. So you can create like a 9-node kind cluster with a bunch of, you know, nodes or whatever. And then there's exec helpers and stuff so that you can easily use your built artifacts to test things. We use it to perform end-to-end tests for the release because we want to be checking that the release built binaries demonstrate the expected behavior, and running kind as a full end-to-end doesn't get you the individual integration pieces between like, oh, this part of the control plane came up and we are expecting this state and that kind of stuff. So yeah.
It looks like they come up at they are Docker containers, but they are effectively like lightweight VMs, or we can think of them as lightweight machines, and then you can exec, which seems really nice. You don't have to SSH in or anything. Like,
yes, yeah, it's basically like kind does that same thing, but gives you the cluster ready to go. Whereas like kinder is like, hey, we're not like really going at all yet, but here's all the infra. It'll even start like a load balancer container for you that's like not running yet and that kind of thing. So you can test like HA scenarios using some simple workflows. But that's a way to like get a cluster that's like not running yet, right?
That looks awesome. Could you potentially paste that in a format with line breaks?
Oh yeah,
Because I would like to try it out.
Here, I will. I'll put it in a gist.
Yeah, I was just scratching my head on how to like show other people to test that, and I was like, well, my scripts are rough. I don't want to publish them, but this sounds like a great sort of toolkit for doing that.
Yeah.
Cool. While we wait for the gist, is any other questions or anything else we need to talk about? Cool. Hey, great work, everyone. Really looks like we're getting somewhere.
Okay. Create public gist. Here we are. There's that. I'll put it in the meeting notes as well.
Sweet. All right. I think we can wrap. Am I being too impatient?
Sorry, I'm just putting it in the meeting notes. And then whenever I like alt tab away from my like Zoom window, I think I'm on mute for some reason, so I just don't talk. But
right.
Yeah, I think we can probably adjourn the meeting. Thanks for all the feedback and questions. And I need to, soon we'll be able to play with the operators in kubeadm. Excited about that. So.
All right. Have a great rest of your day and see you in 2 weeks. Bye.